Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of MeteoMark's Weather. Great to have you on the channel. We're going to be looking at a few tropical waves in particular right out here in the MDR as the Cape Verde season becomes alive. We're going to see an explosion of tropical wave activity as we head into the first week of August. And we're also going to be watching the tail end of a frontal boundary. It could try to spin up a tropical disturbance in the Gulf. We're also looking in the Western Pacific here. Tropical storm Wipha here. We're going to be watching that target South China and North Vietnam, and we'll have your entire typhoon outlook and severe weather and another heat wave as we get cranking later this week around the Ring of Fire. Let's get into it. Looking out here into the MDR of the Atlantic, this is that area we're watching over the next several days. It'll be slowly heading to the west-northwest here. Also, look at these tropical waves behind it. The Cape Verde season is becoming alive. As we look across the Caribbean and Gulf, the Western Gulf here, we have a flare-up of showers and thunderstorms. Also through Honduras and Belize here. Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada area really socked in with this tropical wave, heavy rain action. And look at this. We have some sort of upper-level low just due north of Dominican Republic. A few showers and thunderstorms forming around the Cayman Islands and on the north side of Jamaica. We'll keep an eye on it here. And this stalled front along the East Coast, we'll watch out for this flare-up. This could be trouble as we head on in the next several days. So we're starting off with the tropics here with our GFS model, and then in a couple minutes I'll show you the European. So as we head out in time, let's start from the very beginning here. We have a very strong tropical wave we're going to be watching. It is going to be getting in a more hostile environment later this week with some wind shear to the north and northeast here. So by about the 22nd, we get into Tuesday, you can see it's really starting to, it's still there, but the wind shear is really taking over as this wind shear just to the north of it. Now, the Cape Verde season is really going to awaken. We see the strong tropical wave. Also, the subtropical high system is a bit further to the east this week, so that's going to have implications, but it's going to be building to the west, and that's going to be our system here along the front. Let me just back this up. So we're backing this up to Monday. Here we go. You see this tropical wave trying to form along the tail end of this front. This is going to be the name of the game as we head over the next week. You can see heavy rains for Florida, and we'll go over those rainfall amounts several minutes from now, but you can see July 23rd, it's getting into the Gulf here. Also, our system is approaching the Lesser Antilles. The GFS still holding it on, so this is something we'll have to watch as well. So look what's behind it, though. We've got another very strong tropical wave out here and another one coming off the coast of Africa. Now, if we just want to go further out into Central Africa here, you can see these tropical waves really just lining up one right after another here. So we got a few that we're going to be watching over the next couple weeks, and especially for August, those are really going to get cranking. So here's the MDR. You can see we got a couple tropical waves, one moving through Trinidad, Tobago, all the way up to Martinique here. Also a few more behind it. We're just lining them up here. And then as we head into the Gulf, look at this. Now, this week, at least through the early to midweek, it looks very clear across Dominican Republic, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, even through Cancun, Yucatan here. But look what's getting into the Gulf here. This is looking rather interesting. This run of the GFS bringing it a little further to the south here. That may have implications here for Texas. So we're going to take a look at this. We're going to see what is going to be happening. The latest run of the GFS has this high pressure pushing it due westward towards Texas. So that's something we're going to keep a very close watch on. Of course, the GFS kind of losing it at this point by the 25th, but we'll keep an eye on it. Now, as we head through the 25th here into the 26th, we get some strong tropical wave action moving through the eastern Caribbean here. Another one east and southeast of the Lesser Antilles. Also, we get some tropical moisture with this tropical wave moving through Honduras, Belize, and the southern Yucatan Peninsula. So here we go. We're just going to start lining up these tropical waves. You can see this one right around the 27th. This one does bear watching because look at this. It's moving right through Barbados area, St. Vincent, Grenada, these areas. And it's showing a strong positive signal that we may have to watch this one for development. Also watching a very strong one moving off the coast of Africa out here around the 28th. And you can see, let me just back this up. We have a strong signal of heavy rain moving through Jamaica during this time period. So the 27th, 28th, we got this strong tropical wave moving through the Western Caribbean. During this time, after we get rid of our tropical disturbance in the Gulf, later this week. The next week, look, it looks clear as a bell, even off the southeast U.S. coastline here. So as we continue through the 28th into the 29th, you can see what's happening here. This starts to turn more towards the northwest around this subtropical high because it's starting to lose its influence. Steering current's very weak out here in the Gulf. And then look at out here. We've got some tremendous tropical wave action out here into the MDR. So that's something we're going to keep a close watch on as we get into the 29th, into the 30th. You can see this flare up around Cuba. This tropical wave starts to, get bogged down, so to speak, right off the Florida coastline here. And during this time, you can see a stalled frontal boundary right through Florida. And it kind of gets washed out, so to speak, here. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. But all in all, you can see strong tropical wave action out here continuing out into the intertropical convergence zone. Another strong wave right around August 4th that we'll have to keep a close watch on. And right down here through Nicaragua and Belize and these Honduras areas as well. So here it is. Wetter times are ahead here as we head into the Caribbean through the end of July into the beginning of August. And you can see the last frame here on August 5th. Look at these tropical waves just lining up out here through this time period. And obviously, we'll have to watch the tail end of these frontal boundaries too, flaring up the East Coast. Thank you to Tropical Tidbits for this European tropical model analysis here into the Western Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf. As we continue to go through time, we're watching these areas really cropping up here. You can see the Southern Caribbean, that's where we got a wave. And then there's a little bit of a area of troughiness here across the northwestern Caribbean, also watching our wave off the screen here. That's going to surge moisture through the central Lesser Antilles as we head through Tuesday, the 22nd, into Wednesday. You can see this really gets cranking. We're going to watch this tropical wave because it bears watching as we go out here in time. Now look at off the southeast coast and the Gulf. This is where we're going to have a stalled frontal boundary. This is the area we're going to watch for maybe some potential development here. Caution there because we didn't get Dexter last week, but here we go. This is a different storm. Every storm is different. So here it is getting into the eastern Gulf right around the 24th. We have our big tropical wave moving through the Lesser Antilles, surging tropical moisture westward. So Jamaica, you may get some of these heavier downpours. This is Friday, July 25th, so definitely a wetter week. Look at the Gulf Coast, though. This is really lighting up here on the European run, our latest run. We also have some big tropical wave moving through Honduras, Belize by this time. So we have many areas to watch. There's another area of low pressure, tropical wave just off your screen, making its presence felt as it moves towards Trinidad and Tobago. So as we continue, we can go further out with our previous Euro run here. Look at this. Yeah, this is a big tropical wave getting to the eastern Caribbean right around July 27th here. You see the north central Gulf Coast also lighting up with moisture here. So we're watching several areas as we get into the last week of July here. Look at this. Really flaring up around the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and then this next wave heading into the northwestern Caribbean towards the Yucatan just for the last day of July here. So the Euro hints at some sort of development in the Gulf, but never really fully initializes an area of low pressure. But it does look pretty potent, so it will have to be watched as those persistent thunderstorms can cause a spin up this time of year. And you can see those thunderstorms just slightly inland here. But here we go. As we head through August 3rd, look at the first week of August. Look at these tropical waves lining up here, right around the Lesser Antilles. Also the central Gulf and off the southeast coast with this stalled frontal boundary. Also one east of Nicaragua here. So we're going to continue to watch it. We have plenty to watch out here. And as we head throughout the rest of the Atlantic here, I wanted to show you the intertropical convergence zone on, look at this. Some of these low pressures are looking rather potent here. So as we can start off with our first one, this is the area we're watching initially here. Watch as we put this into motion. European does try to develop this as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles around Wednesday, July 23rd. Another stronger wave behind it bears watching as well, as we could see a spin up and then another one moving off the coast of Africa here. We could get these storms really cranking. This European run really wants to start developing some of these out here. So the Cape Verde season is awakening. And here we go. Sea surface temperature anomalies for the North Atlantic, the rest of the Atlantic as well. Off the East Coast, it's like bathwater. And look at here into the Gulf, we're warming as well. Just a cool spot here in the Central Caribbean, but look at around the Lesser Antilles, back through the Cape Verde season. We are looking at warmer temperatures here. And looking at our tropical downpours across the Western Caribbean here. So this week, we're going to start getting some more wet weather around Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Dominican Republic, Belize, Honduras here in particular, even up the Yucatan Peninsula. So as we head throughout this week, you can see the surge of tropical moisture. Some areas upwards of 100 to 150, close to 200 millimeters. Even Jamaica getting around, say, 40 to 60, right through Dominican Republic as well. But there we go. We got through the first part of August. Belize here, look at some areas upwards of 200 millimeters. Honduras, 150 millimeters on average here. Jamaica, some areas could get upwards of 95 millimeters, especially eastern tip here towards Portland Parish and the western and central areas as well. Dominican Republic looking pretty much the same here. Puerto Rico, you could eke out a half to 3/4 of an inch of rain. Look at the Cayman Islands, though, and Bahamas. You're looking drier, anywhere from 20 to 40 millimeters. So as we take a look at the Western Caribbean here with our GFS run, mostly dry on the GFS through much of the Western Caribbean here with some few showers, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, through Dominican Republic. But look at this as we stretch into the last week of July into the first part of August. Not only Honduras here, look at 271 millimeters, Belize upwards of 268, but look at Jamaica. Some parts of Jamaica could be getting upwards of 125, 130 millimeters with average amounts, 30 to 60 millimeters here. So watch out. Dominican Republic, look at this, 140, 170 millimeters in some of these areas. Also Puerto Rico, depending on where you are, some of these areas could be getting up to 3 to 4 inches of rain. All right, as we get into the Eastern Caribbean with our Euro model here, look at this. Yeah, we're going to start seeing mid to late week surges of tropical waves. We're going to be watching our tropical wave out here that's going to be surging through the islands, Trinidad, Tobago, all the way up the island chain. There's some areas that could get 100 to 200 millimeters of rain. Watch out, especially the central Lesser Antilles in here. That's where things are really going to get cranking. And there's our rainfall totals getting into the Eastern Caribbean. So widespread 60 to 125 millimeters likely. And heading on into the Eastern Caribbean, yeah, that tropical wave action mid to late week, that's going to be surging tropical moisture all the way through the end of July into the beginning of August. Look at the Lesser Antilles. This is where I think, some of these flare-ups, Trinidad, Tobago, 130 to 160 millimeters, even up to St. Vincent, Barbados, all these areas, St. Lucia, Martinique, some of these areas could get close to 200 millimeters. All right, heading out into the Western Pacific, you can see we got a smattering of heavy rain. Of course, this is normal for the northern Philippines up to Taiwan. Look at Japan and South Korea, though. Seoul over to Tokyo, maybe just a few showers flaring up, but the South Korean peninsula is looking clear as a bell here. Most of Japan as well. Now look at here. This is what we're dealing with. Let's just back this up. This is Tropical Storm Wipha here. That's going to be heading into South China and North Vietnam over the next couple days. Heavy rain, and we'll go over those rainfall amounts momentarily. We do have another big area of low pressure spinning up east of Taiwan. As we head through the 23rd into the 24th, you can see we have the potential for a typhoon potentially kicking up here well southeast of Japan. That's going to be heading slowly to the north as it combines forces with this synoptic low just to the west of it. But ultimately, you can see this big slug of tropical moisture associated with it. It's kind of strange because it's kind of resembling a synoptic system, but it looks like it's becoming extra tropical by this point, right around the 29th into the 30th, as this low kind of just occludes well east of Japan. Very nice, though, for South Korea, Japan over to Shanghai, China. Most of this heavier rain keeping to the south and east. Another flare-up could develop some sort of typhoon southeast of Japan, but that pretty much stays to the southeast. Look at South China, though. Really socked in with the rain. I do have to say, though, this dry pattern for Japan really lines up for some potential dry days, 6 to 12 days out. Of course, that coordinates really well with Eastern North America, so that's a signal we'll keep an eye on here as we head through the first part of August. As we take a look here, the Western Pacific rainfall amounts, obviously the Philippines are in their monsoon, so this is definitely normal for you as a previous viewer sent in. So yeah, this is pretty much normal. I know for a lot of us, look at this, 500, 600, 800 millimeters of rainfall seems insane, but yeah, that's northern Philippines here. Central and southern Philippines are less, but look at Taiwan here, right around 250, 300 millimeters. Japan getting a little bit of a break here, except central Japan, upwards of 130, 140 millimeters. Southern Japanese islands as well, up towards 200 millimeters. Look at the Korean Peninsula, though. Barely 20, 30, maybe 40 millimeters up towards Seoul. South Korea here. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. South China and northern Vietnam also getting in on this 300 to 500 millimeter amounts. All right, so continuing the rest of our Sunday evening, the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, we're going to see these showers and thunderstorms continuing here. Look at this. Some of these could really pack a punch as we continue in time here, especially here to parts of the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. So as we head on into your Monday, here's 5 a.m. on Monday. See the Gulf Coast is clear with the exception of central and northern parts of Florida here. These thunderstorm complexes, here's an MCS way up here into Minnesota and North Dakota. That's going to get cranking around the Minneapolis area around 4 p.m., 5 p.m. here. And as we continue to go in time, you can see what we're going to be looking at here. The Outer Banks, let me just back this up, here through 3 p.m., Virginia Beach, inland as well. We're going to see these flare-ups of showers and thunderstorms through 8 p.m. on the 21st. And we're going to continue to watch this because this frontal boundary is going to stall just off the coastline here. We're going to watch this drift slowly westward. Once again, another area of low pressure, a tropical wave. So we'll continue to watch it. Look at the last frame, though. Yeah, you're seeing quite an MCS dropping down here across the northern Midwest. High pressure building into the Northeast. And looking across the rest of your Sunday evening, slight risk here into the Northeast, damaging wind, large hail. Also parts of the Ohio Valley here and the Northern Plains. Watch out. Damaging wind, large hail, isolated tornadoes. And as we get into Monday here, look at this. Yeah, it's going to be slight risk down and through parts of the Carolinas, Georgia, the Tennessee River Valley, Appalachians, into the Northern Plains as well. And as we kick right on into your Tuesday, it looks like a broken record here, Northern Plains, and then maybe sinking this a little further to the south. And picking up where our future radar left off, look at this. So as we head on into Tuesday, yeah, all eyes are going to be on that stalled frontal boundary. What happens to this potential area of tropical wave action trying to form on the southern end of this front? Mesoscale convective systems coming up and over this ridge with this ring of fire. Look at this. Southern Ontario, Quebec, the northern part of the Midwest here could see some big action. Look at high pressure, though, trying to build along the East Coast. That's some great news. Maybe some drawing weather here into portions of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, interior Northeast as well. Now, that potential flare-up, we could be looking at that heading towards Louisiana and Texas as this high pressure pushes it westward. Here's a 26, though. With this heat dome, we're going to start to get this front dropping to the south, and some severe weather could kick up right around the 26th into the 27th as waves of low pressure form along it into next weekend. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Mesoscale convective systems plowing along the north side of it as well through parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania here into the Mid-Atlantic. So watch out. A low pressure does try to flare up off the Mid-Atlantic right around the 28th into the 29th. We'll see if we can get some sort of coastal low trying to form here. Sometimes they can go subtropical or tropical this time of year. But all in all, we're looking at, it does, you can see this upper level low trying to form along the Appalachians or just east of it. That's going to be the trend as we get into the 30th, into the 31st. You can see what's happening here. We have plenty of tropical moisture just hanging out off the coast. But that will start to retrograde a little bit back westward here. You can see as it heads towards the southeast and eventually drifting a little bit further to the west, while the main front pretty much outpaces this as high pressure builds into eastern North America through August 5th. All right, so for our European run, picking up where our future radar left off as we continue throughout the week, this low pressure off the southeast coast, that's going to be the big story as we head through time here. It's going to continue to cause some wet weather, southern South Carolina, Georgia, into Florida here as this area of low pressure. We're also watching some mesoscale convective systems around the northern periphery of this ring of fire ridge, as well as this ridge up here into the northeast. You can see, look at Florida. and the Gulf Coast states. We really get cranking with this rainfall. We'll be watching for any tropical development as this enters the Gulf mid to late week. Here it is, Thursday the 24th. And you get the idea here. Look at this classic ring of fire setting up right around the edges. That's where we'll see those MCS systems. It looks like they're further to the north than previous model runs here. Through the 25th, look what's happening. We do get high pressure building off the Carolinas. Just inland here is where we're going to see the heaviest rain pivoting towards the Gulf Coast as this tropical wave on the tail end of this front moves to the north central Gulf. Here is where we're going to start to see Friday into Saturday. Look at these MCS mesoscale convective systems moving through Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Yeah, Sunday the 27th, look at this. We're really getting in on the act of some very active wet weather up here. Severe thunderstorms possible throughout the northeast, mid-Atlantic here into Monday the 28th. You see that low pressure exiting off the coast. But here's our big tropical entity just hanging out here. Also watching this front along the east coast. And Tuesday, look at this. We get a flare-up of big showers and thunderstorms. That pushes off the coast pretty readily here. Outer Banks of North Carolina, South Carolina here, we're looking the 31st from wet weather as this low tries to kick off. We have a blocking high up here, so any systems are going to be forced either up and over or down through parts of the deep south here. And you can see we just have a lot of tropical moisture hanging out from the Outer Banks down through eastern and central Gulf here. So we're going to continue to watch it. We could have some tropical development, either East Coast or Gulf. This area is just primed. Look at this. Through the 3rd of August, we just continue to get this deluzes of showers and thunderstorms, tropical downpours. MCS up here into parts of Ontario, Canada. All right, so let's take a look at our liquid equivalent precipitation amounts on our European run. It's the Midwest, Ohio Valley here. That's where we're going to see the heaviest rain. Also, the Gulf Coast, north central, eastern Gulf Coast, and the Carolina coastlines in particular here, and just slightly inland. As we head through the first part of August, yeah, you can see where our trouble areas are. Up through the Midwest here, Ohio Valley, parts of the lakes and northeast, some areas upwards of 1 to 2.5 inches, close to 3 inches. But the big trouble spots are going to be southeastern Louisiana with these tropical waves, the tail end of this front. 4 to as much as 8 inches of rain could fall in this area. If we take a look at liquid equivalent precipitation here on the GFS, comparing to the Euro, looks pretty well on target. I must say, though, yeah, there's a lot along the Gulf Coast here, around 2, 5, 6 inches. Some of these areas close to 9 inches. But look at up here, the Outer Banks. As we head towards, say, the end of the month, the GFS kind of going crazy. It's more like August 2nd to August 3rd here. You can see we're seeing totals upwards of 6, 7 inches. So we'll have to keep an eye on that development. Ohio Valley into the Midwest as well, 2 to 5 inches. And before we continue with more weather coverage here, if you made it this far in the video and you like it, thanks so much. Smash that like button, everyone. It really does help. Question or comment down below. I love to read your questions or comments and respond to them. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit that bell notification button. We got to get to 20,000 subscribers here. And don't forget, if you haven't caught my 2025 hurricane forecast for the Atlantic Basin, it's a link at the end of this video and a link in the description down below. Let's continue. And looking at our upper air pattern for North America, there's that trough moving through early week along the New England area. That's going to provide some cooler, nice Canadian air. But look at how quickly it's replaced by that inferno firecracker ridge building in mid to late week. That heat dome really taking back over, unfortunately. So we did have a nice weekend in many areas with nicer temperatures, but that heat's going to be back. I do think it's going to start to go away a little bit, though, as we get a little bit of troughiness here. You see these lighter colors along the East Coast as we get into the last week of July. Look at this. Yeah, this is going to open up the pipeline for some 70s and 80s and getting rid of a lot of those 90s. So unfortunately, it's going to open up the pipeline potentially for more rainfall potential as well. But look at that. That starts to lift out by the 31st. And even then, we're left with a cutoff low along the southeast coastline here into the Gulf. That's going to slowly drift towards the Gulf as we go throughout time here through August 2nd here. You can see what's happening. Basically, the subtropical high, we have 2 areas of high pressure blocking this low, and it is going to start to drift further west here. So for the NAO index here, we are negative. We are going towards neutral to slightly positive by the beginning of August. And looking at our MJO index, we are going from a Phase 5, 6 borderline here. Unfortunately, we're going to be heading towards 7 and 8. That means more active weather conditions are expected across eastern North America and the Atlantic Ocean, especially as we head into the second, third week of August. All right, so let's take a look at our Canadian weather outlook here. It is a stormy weather pattern here as we continue into eastern Canada. High pressure initially building in with the Canadian Maritimes getting all this low pressure. Look at Manitoba, though, and Alberta. This is some great news, getting some beneficial rain as we head throughout Monday into Tuesday here. You can see the storm pattern continuing to drop through Ontario as we head through midweek. A little bit clearing out here in the prairies and the Rocky Mountains as stormy conditions take over in Quebec and Ontario here through New Brunswick. You can see southern Quebec. We get these bouts of showers and thunderstorms. I think mesoscale convective complexes, mesoscale convective systems, derechos, those sort of things, chances are running very high here across Ontario and Quebec. Now, as we head out further west here, you can see these showers and thunderstorms continuing across Alberta, northern Saskatchewan. That is some great news for the wildfire situation as we head late week here across Alberta and Saskatchewan. And look at this explosive thunderstorm development as we continue through eastern Manitoba, western parts of Ontario. Through the 28th, you can see that pushing to the south and east towards Quebec. So we see an area of showers and thunderstorms. It is going to be weakening as it heads to the east, but look at up here into northern Alberta. More rain where those wildfires have been burning. So that is some great news. We do fire some severe weather on July 29th right out here in the prairies. This low pressure moving up through the Canadian Maritimes, creating some gusty winds and heavy rain. And look at this. Yeah, mesoscale convective complexes will be heading around this ring of fire from the United States. So watch out. There could be some severe weather. Look at this nice rainy pattern out here into the Rockies and the western prairies where we've had some wildfire problems. Now, as we get into the 2nd and the 3rd of August, you can see these storms really firing here. New Brunswick in particular. We could be looking at heavy rain, gusty winds, severe weather through southern Ontario as well. And then the west coast out here, look at this. We get an explosion of showers and thunderstorms as we head throughout August 4th here through southern Saskatchewan, Manitoba, eastern Alberta, and western Ontario here. Very stormy weather pattern. So Canadian rainfall here, yeah. It's going to be interesting because it's a very active weather pattern. You can see here through the first week of August, up here into wildfire territory, this is some welcome news up here. Look at this. Some areas eclipsing 60 to 120 millimeters of rainfall, even the west coastline here with these Pacific systems. Look at the southern areas of the prairies here, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, also getting some heavy rain through central and southern Ontario and Quebec and the Canadian Maritimes. There's widespread swaths of 60 to 120 millimeters of rainfall. Temperatures are going to be a huge story. We're going to be back and forth in many areas. Look at the heat building out here. Some areas over 100 degrees. Look at the lakes in the Northeast. This is a beautiful day if you have off. Look at that. 70s. And near 80 degrees. Some areas in the upper 60s in northern New England. But look at this Tuesday. Unfortunately, the heat does start to push to the northeast here. We see those mid to high 80s starting to show up. And as we get into Wednesday, July 23rd here, yeah, the heat is starting to build. The humidity, mid to high 80s in the northeast. Look at 90s here in the Ohio Valley and the western Great Lakes. And as we go into Thursday, the 90s are on. Many areas are going to be approaching the mid to high 90s, heat index values over 100. And then into Friday, July 25th here, this is just awful. Look at, I can't find any state other than maybe Maine up here that's below 90 degree readings. This is crazy. As we head into Saturday, July 26th, look at this. I just don't see this heat going away. Look at this. 90s all the way up into parts of the lakes northeast, mid to high 90s, interior Carolinas, and central plains in the hundreds. The extended forecast from hometown viewers. Bring them to the Scranton, Susquehanna, River Valley, New York, and Pennsylvania. So here's the deal. We start off nice and cool. Mid 70s on Monday, Tuesday, upper 70s into Wednesday. Unfortunately, the heat and humidity is coming back in a big way Wednesday and Thursday. Look at this. By Thursday, we'll be in the mid to high 90s. That is horrible. And then by Friday, we get those showers and thunderstorms, mid to high 90s, and we could be looking at strong to severe thunderstorms with that big cold front. Plenty more weather to come. Here is a look at my affiliate. Check out these awesome, amazing maps. I am proud to announce that I am now an affiliate with Trilogy Maps. TrilogyMaps.com, bringing you the most digital, customizable maps found nowhere else on the internet. These maps are simply stunning. It's an advanced layering system that makes these maps great for making forecast maps with ease or any other maps that you would like to display important information on. The resolution on these maps is simply amazing. From the detail of everything here in the States, and you can also create stunning, digital, professional layered maps from also across the entire world. And don't forget, in checkout, the discount code option, use my code, MeteoMark, hit apply, and you will get 20% off your order. So if you want the most professional, customizable, and affordable weather maps found nowhere else on the internet, look no further than TrilogyMaps.com. Link in the description down below along with your discount code. As always, thank you for joining me for this edition of MeteoMark's Weather. Also, don't forget to join me on Facebook at MeteoMark, also Weather Northeastern, also Twitter at Weather Eastern. Don't forget it's MeteoMark.com, and don't forget, if you want to send me a coffee, there is a link, Super Thanks. You can smash that Super Thanks button or my PayPal link in the description down below. You can buy me a cup of coffee. Thanks everyone, share that video, subscribe if you haven't, smash that like button.